Your unfulfilled dreams aren't random. They're warnings. Ignore them long enough, and they turn into regret you can't escape. What you're about to hear might change how you see your entire life. There's a quiet truth most people never confront. The dreams you didn't live don't disappear. They watch you. They show up in moments of silence, in that strange emptiness after success, in the feeling that something is off, even when life looks right. And here's the uncomfortable, counterintuitive reality. Those unfulfilled dreams are not signs of failure. They are messages from your inner self, calling you back into alignment. What feels like dissatisfaction is often awakening. What feels like restlessness is your purpose refusing to be buried. Most people are taught to suppress these signals, to be grateful, to be realistic, to settle. But suppression has a cost, and you've probably been paying it with your energy, your clarity, and your sense of meaning. This video isn't about chasing fantasies or abandoning responsibility. It's about learning how to decode the signals your dreams, your unfulfilled desires, and even your fear have been sending you all along. Because once you understand what those signals really mean, everything changes. You stop fighting discomfort. You stop running from desire. And you start moving toward transformation, not by force, but by truth. You know that feeling you can't quite shake, the quiet ache that shows up when life slows down. It hits you in the shower, on a late drive home, or right before sleep steals your thoughts. That ache isn't random, and it's definitely not weakness. It's your inner self tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Hey, we're not done here." Most people try to drown it out with noise, work, scrolling, or comfort. But the truth is that discomfort is often the first sign of awakening. It's the moment your dreams stop whispering and start pressing. You feel it because there's a deeper purpose trying to surface. And whether you like it or not, that feeling means something inside you is still alive. Ignore it long enough and it doesn't disappear, it grows teeth. Think of this ache like a smoke alarm going off in the middle of the night. You wouldn't say the alarm is the problem. The fire is. Your unfulfilled desires are that alarm, alerting you that your life and your alignment are drifting apart. You might look successful on the outside, yet feel oddly disconnected on the inside. That's not ingratitude, that's misalignment between who you are and how you're living. Many people confuse stability with fulfillment, but they're not the same thing. A steady routine can still starve your soul of meaning. The ache shows up to remind you of that gap. It's the signal that comfort has replaced growth, and deep down, you know you didn't come this far just to feel numb. Here's where most people get it twisted. They think something is wrong with them. But listen closely. Nothing is broken. You're just evolving. That ache is the tension before transformation, like muscles tearing before they grow stronger. Your fear kicks in because change threatens the familiar, not because it threatens you. When your old life no longer fits, discomfort becomes unavoidable. It's like wearing shoes you've outgrown. Every step hurts, but the pain has a message. Your inner self is asking for expansion, not escape. And the more you resist, the louder the signal becomes. This is how self-discovery begins, not with clarity, but with friction. Clarity always comes after you stop pretending everything's fine. Let me make this practical for you, because wisdom without application is just entertainment. Start by paying attention to when the ache gets louder. Is it after work, during weekends, or when you see someone living boldly? That's data, not coincidence. Write down the moments that trigger that restlessness. Yes, actually write them. Patterns reveal meaning faster than motivation ever will. If reading helps you reflect, start with books like Man's Search for Meaning or Think and Grow Rich. They don't give answers. They sharpen your questions. This isn't about quitting your life overnight. It's about listening again, because awareness is the first real act of courage. And here's the part most people won't tell you. This ache is selective. Not everyone feels it, because not everyone is meant to wake up at the same time. You feel it because there's more life in you asking to be lived. Your dreams are not demanding perfection. They're asking for honesty. Honesty about what excites you, scares you, and pulls you forward. Once you admit that the ache is real, you can't unsee it. From here on, every distraction will feel thinner, every excuse weaker. That's when the real tension begins, not outside but inside. Because now you're standing at the edge of a deeper truth. And that truth is about to challenge everything you thought was safe. When you ignore a dream, it doesn't vanish into thin air. It slips underground like a seed buried beneath concrete, waiting for cracks. You may think you've moved on, grown up, or outgrown that desire. But your dreams don't work like hobbies. They're tied to purpose. They adapt, they wait, and they express themselves in other ways. That's why restlessness shows up even when life looks fine. Your inner self never stopped sending messages, you just stopped listening. And those messages don't expire with age or responsibility. They mature, deepen, and demand more meaning over time. That's the quiet pressure you feel when things should feel good, but don't. Think of it like background music playing in a cafe. At first you barely notice it, but once it's off, the silence feels wrong. Unlived, unfulfilled desires work the same way. They hum beneath your routines, your conversations, your choices. You might call it boredom, fatigue, or a midlife crisis. But labels don't change the truth. It's alignment, slipping out of sync. You weren't meant to just function. You were meant to express. And when expression is delayed, the soul finds alternative outlets. Sometimes that shows up as irritation, sometimes as overworking, sometimes as numb scrolling. None of those solve the root issue. They just mute the sound temporarily. Here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. Suppression has a cost. What you push down doesn't disappear. It redirects. A dream denied often turns into quiet resentment or self-doubt. You start questioning your confidence, your choices, even your worth, not because you're failing, but because your inner self knows you're settling. This is where fear gets sneaky. It convinces you that staying stuck is safer than risking disappointment. But safety without meaning slowly erodes your energy. That's why so many people feel tired without being physically exhausted. They're carrying the weight of unlived potential. Let's ground this in something real you can actually do. Take one suppressed dream, not the biggest one, just one, and break it down. Ask yourself, what part of this dream still excites me? If it was writing, start with 10 minutes a day, no pressure. If it was learning, pick one book, one skill, one small step. For mindset, books like Atomic Habits help translate desire into action. Action doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Small commitments rebuild trust with yourself. And trust is what reconnects you to self-discovery. Momentum begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. What's fascinating is that once you acknowledge a buried dream, something shifts. The pressure doesn't disappear, but it becomes directional. You stop feeling lost and start feeling pulled toward growth, toward transformation, toward truth. That's when curiosity replaces confusion. You begin to notice how many choices you've made on autopilot. And that awareness can feel unsettling at first. Because now you see the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. That gap isn't a failure, it's an invitation. And what comes next will challenge how you see discomfort itself. Let's clear something up right away. Discomfort isn't your enemy. It's not life being cruel, and it's not a sign that you're failing. Discomfort is feedback, raw, honest, and impossible to ignore for long. It shows up when your inner self realizes you've outgrown the version of life you're living. Most people panic at that moment and rush to numb it. They chase comfort like it's the cure, when comfort is often the cause. Growth always disrupts stability before it upgrades it. That uneasy feeling is your awakening knocking, not your downfall arriving. And once you understand that, discomfort loses its power to scare you. It starts making sense. Think about how a GPS recalculates when you miss a turn. It doesn't shame you, it redirects you. Discomfort works the same way for your purpose. When your actions drift away from your deeper truth, tension appears. Not to punish you, but to course correct you. If everything feels too smooth, too predictable, too quiet inside, that's a warning too. A life without friction often means a life without meaning. That's why comfort can feel strangely empty after a while. Your dreams need resistance to grow muscles. Without challenge, desire weakens into routine. Here's where fear usually hijacks the story. It whispers that discomfort means danger, loss, or regret. But fear isn't a prophet, it's a gatekeeper. It stands at the edge of every real transformation, asking, "Are you serious?" Most people turn back at that gate because they want certainty before movement. But certainty only shows up after action, never before. Discomfort is the toll you pay to cross into self-discovery. Avoiding it doesn't protect you, it just delays the lesson. And delayed lessons come back louder. That's why patterns repeat until they're understood. Let's make this usable, not just philosophical. Next time discomfort hits, don't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" Ask, "What is this pointing me toward?" If your job drains you, maybe it's time to build a skill on the side. Courses, books, or even mentors online can open new doors. Slowly, safely. If your relationships feel shallow, invest in deeper conversations, not more distractions. Read something that stretches your thinking, like The Alchemist. These actions don't eliminate discomfort, they refine it. They turn chaos into direction, and direction creates confidence. What's powerful is that once you stop fighting discomfort, it changes texture. It becomes less sharp, more instructive. You start noticing that every major leap in your life was preceded by unease. Moving cities, changing paths, choosing yourself. None of it felt comfortable at first. Yet those moments shaped who you are today. That's not coincidence, that's design. Your unfulfilled desires aren't here to torment you, they're here to mature you. And as you learn to read discomfort correctly, something shifts inside. You begin to sense that the next signal won't come as pain, but as desire. Desire isn't random, even when it feels confusing. That pull you feel towards certain ideas, places, or possibilities has intelligence behind it. Your inner self speaks in attraction long before it speaks in logic. Most people wait for permission, certainty, or a perfect plan. But desire shows up first. It's the preview, not the explanation. That's why your dreams often don't make sense on paper. They're not meant to impress others, they're meant to move you. Desire is how purpose taps you on the chest and says, "This way." Ignore it, and life feels flat. Listen to it, and everything sharpens. Think of desire like a compass in unfamiliar territory. It doesn't tell you every step. You still have to walk, but it always points north, toward meaning. When you silence that compass, you start wandering in circles. That's when people say they feel lost, even while staying busy. Busyness without direction drains energy faster than failure. Your unfulfilled desires aren't distractions from real life. They are the clues to the life that fits you. The problem isn't wanting too much. It's wanting without trust. And trust is built by taking small steps in the direction that excites you. Here's where fear usually steps in wearing a clever disguise. It pretends to be practicality, responsibility, or maturity. It says, "That's unrealistic," or "Now's not the time." But fear rarely argues against things that don't matter. It only reacts when something threatens the status quo. That's how you know desire is pointing somewhere real. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel resistance. Desire and fear often rise together before transformation. One pulls you forward, the other tests your resolve. Understanding this changes how you interpret both. Let's bring this into your everyday life for a moment. Pay attention to what consistently grabs your curiosity. Is it teaching, creating, leading, building, or healing? Those patterns are messages, not coincidences. If you feel drawn to learning, Start with one book or course. For leadership, observe mentors who inspire you and model their habits. If creativity calls you, set aside protected time. No phones, no excuses. These actions don't require a career shift overnight. They're experiments that strengthen your connection to self-discovery, and experiments build confidence faster than daydreaming ever will. What's subtle but powerful is how desire changes once you honor it. It stops feeling like restless wanting and starts feeling like quiet knowing. You become more selective with your time, energy, and attention. Things that once distracted you lose their grip. You're no longer chasing everything, you're choosing something. That's when alignment begins to replace confusion, and alignment feels calm, not chaotic. It doesn't shout, it steadies you. As that steadiness grows, another realization sneaks in. Some successes don't satisfy because they were never yours to chase. There's a strange moment many people don't talk about, the moment you win and still feel empty. You hit the goal, earn the title, check the box, and wait for fulfillment to arrive. But instead of joy, there's a quiet pause, then confusion. That hollowness isn't ingratitude, it's misalignment revealing itself. You followed the script, did what made sense, played it safe, yet your inner self stayed silent through the applause. Success without meaning feels like eating food with no flavor. It fills you, but it doesn't nourish you. That's when unfulfilled desires start whispering again, and they whisper louder in rooms full of praise. Think of success like wearing a tailored suit that isn't yours. It looks sharp, impresses people, photographs well, but every movement feels restricted. You keep adjusting, smiling, enduring, telling yourself it's fine. That's how borrowed goals behave. They reward the ego while starving the soul. Your dreams don't respond to status, they respond to truth. And truth always exposes the gap between achievement and purpose. That gap is what drains your energy over time. Not effort, misdirection. Here's where fear keeps you stuck longer than necessary. It says, you should be grateful, don't rock the boat. It convinces you that wanting more depth means being selfish. But wanting alignment isn't greed, it's honesty. You weren't built to live someone else's definition of enough. That hollow feeling is a signal that you've mastered survival, but not expression. And expression is where transformation begins. Ignoring that signal leads to quiet resentment. Listening to it leads to self-discovery. The difference is courage. Let's get practical because clarity grows through action. Ask yourself one simple question. Which part of my success feels heavy? Is it the role, the pace, the expectations, or the identity attached to it? Write it down. Naming it reduces its power. Then ask, what would feel lighter even if it paid less at first? That answer points toward alignment. Start experimenting in low-risk ways. Side projects, new skills, honest conversations. Read biographies of people who redefine success on their own terms, not to copy them, but to normalize choosing meaning over applause. Momentum begins when honesty replaces performance. What's fascinating is that once you admit success feels hollow, something loosens inside. You stop pretending. You stop chasing the next external win to fill an internal void. Your attention shifts inward, where real answers live. That's when awakening becomes unavoidable, because now you're not asking, how do I get more? You're asking, what actually fits me? And that question changes the direction of everything. It challenges how you define progress, value, and fulfillment. And it quietly sets the stage for the next confrontation. Fear at the gate. Fear gets a bad reputation, but let's be honest. It's misunderstood. It shows up right when things start to matter. Not at the edge of comfort, but at the edge of change. Fear isn't there to stop you, it's there to test you, to see if your dreams are just fantasies or real intentions. That tight feeling in your chest, that's the gate, not the wall. Your inner self already knows what you want. Fear just asks, Are you willing to leave what's familiar? And that question separates wishers from builders. Not because one is better, but because one is ready. Think of fear like a bouncer at the door of a new life. It doesn't care about your excuses. It checks commitment. If you hesitate, it doesn't judge. It just keeps the rope up. Every meaningful transformation you've ever admired passed through fear first. No one stumbles into purpose accidentally. The people you respect didn't lack fear. They walked with it. Fear shows up when meaning is on the line. That's why it feels personal, loud, and convincing. But fear has one weakness. It can't survive motion. Action shrinks it every single time. Here's where most people misinterpret the signal. They feel fear and assume it means danger, but more often it means expansion. Your nervous system hasn't updated yet. It's still running old software. Fear reacts to uncertainty, not to truth. And truth doesn't need comfort to be real. When your unfulfilled desires surface, fear rushes in to protect the old identity. Not because the old identity is right, but because it's known. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. That's the illusion fear sells best. Let's talk application, because courage is built, not born. When fear hits, don't ask it to leave. Give it a job. Say, okay, you can come with me, but you don't get to drive. Then take one small, visible action toward what matters. Send the email, sign up for the class, start the project. If learning helps you feel grounded, read books like The Mountain Is You. They reframe fear as internal resistance, not external threat. Small wins train your system to associate fear with progress, and progress rewires your sense of alignment. You start trusting yourself again. What's powerful is what happens after you pass the gate once. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. You recognize its patterns, its timing, its tricks. You stop negotiating with it for permission, and suddenly, self-discovery accelerates. You realize you've been capable all along. That fear was never a verdict, it was a threshold. Crossing it changes how you see discomfort, desire, and risk, because now you know the door was never locked. And on the other side of that door, a quieter voice is waiting, your past self. There's a version of you that existed before fear learned your name, before practicality dimmed your imagination. That version made bold promises in quiet moments, not to impress anyone, but to feel alive. Your inner self hasn't forgotten those promises, even if you have. Time doesn't erase them, it preserves them. That's why certain memories still sting or inspire. They're reminders, not nostalgia. Your dreams didn't belong to a phase. They belong to you, and they're still waiting for acknowledgement. Think of your past self like a letter you never opened. It's been sitting there, patient, unopened, but intact. Every time you feel that ache of unfulfilled desires, it's that letter tapping the envelope, not demanding answers, asking for honesty. You may have changed, matured, adapted, and that's good, but adaptation isn't supposed to mean erasure. Growth builds on truth. It doesn't replace it. When people say, "I'm not who I used to be," what they often mean is, "I stopped listening." And silence always creates distance from meaning. Here's where fear rewrites the story. It tells you that going back to old dreams is regression, that revisiting them means you failed to move on. But that's a misunderstanding of self-discovery. Returning with wisdom isn't backward, it's integration. You don't relive the dream the same way, you reimagine it. The adult version of you has resources the younger you didn't. Experience, discernment, patience. What once felt impossible may now be manageable. The dream didn't outgrow you. You outgrew the fear around it. Let's make this tangible, not abstract. Think about something you once loved but abandoned. Writing, music, teaching, building, helping, whatever it was. Now ask, what stopped me? Was it money, approval, timing, or confidence? Then ask a better question. What version of this fits my life now? Maybe it's 1 hour a week instead of a full leap. Maybe it's learning again before performing. Small reconnections rebuild alignment, and alignment restores energy. What's surprising is how quickly clarity returns once you reconnect. You don't feel younger, you feel truer. You stop blaming circumstances and start noticing choices. That's when awakening deepens, because now you see that the gap wasn't created by time, it was created by avoidance. And avoidance dissolves the moment you face it gently. Your past self isn't angry, it's hopeful. It's been waiting for permission, not perfection. And once you grant that permission, another truth surfaces. Ignoring the call always leaves a mark. Nothing in you goes unpaid. Every choice you delay, every truth you avoid, every dream you silence leaves a mark. Not immediately. Slowly, quietly, almost politely. At first the cost feels small, manageable. A little boredom here, a little irritation there. But over time, that bill grows interest. Your inner self keeps the ledger, even when you don't. And eventually, the cost shows up as exhaustion without effort. You're not tired, you're misaligned. And misalignment always charges a fee. Think of ignoring your calling like skipping maintenance on a house. Nothing collapses right away, so you assume everything's fine. But behind the walls, small cracks spread. That's how unfulfilled desires work. They don't explode, they erode. Confidence weakens, patience thins, joy becomes conditional. You start living reactively instead of intentionally, and without meaning, even good days feel strangely empty. This isn't punishment, it's feedback. Life is trying to get your attention before something breaks. Here's the sneaky part. Fear convinces you that avoiding the call is the responsible choice. It frames suppression as maturity and delay as wisdom. But wisdom doesn't ignore truth, it integrates it. Avoidance doesn't eliminate risk, it just relocates it. You trade the risk of action for the risk of regret, and regret is heavier because it's silent. It doesn't scream, it lingers. That lingering shows up in questions you avoid at night, questions about purpose, direction, and wasted potential. Questions that don't go away with distractions. Let's ground this with something you can actually do. Start tracking where your energy leaks. Which activities drain you more than they should? Which conversations leave you feeling smaller? Those are clues pointing to misalignment. Now compare them with moments when you feel engaged, curious, alive. Even if they're rare, they matter. That contrast reveals what your inner self values. Adjusting your life doesn't require burning it down. It starts with small reclaims of time, attention, and choice. What happens when you finally acknowledge the cost is subtle but powerful. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop telling yourself someday like it's a strategy. Awareness sharpens, and with it responsibility, not guilt, ownership. Ownership over your direction, your transformation, your future. You begin to sense that ignoring the call is no longer neutral. It's actively shaping the life you don't want. And that realization creates urgency, not panic, but clarity, because once you see the cost clearly, you're ready to move toward courage. Most people wait for clarity like it's a green light from the universe. They say, once I'm sure, then I'll move. But that's not how life works, and deep down you already know it. Clarity is not the starting point, it's the reward for motion. Your inner self reveals truth in layers, not all at once. If you demand certainty before action, you'll stay frozen forever. That hesitation isn't wisdom, it's fear dressed as patience. Courage is what turns confusion into direction, and direction is what gives meaning to effort. You don't find the path, you walk it into existence. Think of clarity like headlights on a dark road at night. They don't illuminate the entire journey, just the next few meters. And that's enough to keep moving. Your dreams work the same way. They don't hand you a map. They ask for a step. Each step reveals the next, building trust with yourself. That's how self-discovery actually happens, through experience, not theory. People who seem certain didn't start that way. They acted while uncertain and learned along the way. Certainty is a side effect, not a prerequisite. Here's where unfulfilled desires often get misunderstood. They're not asking for perfection or a 5-year plan. They're asking for participation, for you to show up imperfectly and learn in motion. Avoiding action keeps desire abstract and overwhelming. Action breaks it into manageable pieces. One conversation, one attempt, one uncomfortable step. That's how alignment begins to form. You feel less scattered, more grounded, because momentum organizes the mind. Let's make this concrete so it doesn't stay philosophical. If you feel drawn to a new direction, test it in real life. Volunteer, shadow someone, start a small project, take a short course. If reading helps, books like The 4-Hour Workweek can expand perspective, not provide answers, but possibilities. Journal after action, not before. Reflection is more honest when it's earned. Notice how your energy responds. Energy never lies. What energizes you consistently points toward purpose. What drains you consistently signals misalignment. Clarity sharpens when you respect those signals. What's powerful is what happens internally once you act despite uncertainty. You stop seeing yourself as stuck and start seeing yourself as capable. Confidence grows from evidence, not affirmations. Each brave step rewires how you relate to fear. You trust yourself more even when outcomes are unclear. That trust fuels transformation. You're no longer waiting for life to tell you who you are. You're discovering it through choice. And as that identity stabilizes, a deeper realization begins to surface. Because once courage becomes a habit, something even more profound asks to emerge. Who you've always known yourself to be. There's a quiet recognition that happens when everything starts to line up. Not excitement, not fireworks, just a deep sense of rightness. It feels less like becoming someone new and more like remembering. Your inner self has been guiding you here the whole time. Through tension, desire, discomfort, and courage. This isn't a reinvention, it's a return. Your dreams weren't asking you to change who you are. They were asking you to stop pretending you're someone else. That's where real alignment begins, and alignment feels calm, grounded, and undeniable. Think of this phase like tuning an instrument. Nothing new is added, it's simply adjusted back into harmony. When your actions match your values, life stops feeling like resistance. Effort becomes meaningful instead of draining. You still work, struggle, and stretch, but it feels purposeful. This is where meaning replaces noise. You're no longer chasing approval or escaping fear. You're expressing something true. That expression isn't loud, it's consistent, and consistency is what builds a life that fits. Here's the subtle shift most people miss. When you live in alignment, decisions get simpler. Not easier, simpler. You stop asking, will this impress others? And start asking, does this respect who I am? That question filters distractions automatically. Your unfulfilled desires soften because they're being honored. Not fully completed, but acknowledged and acted on. Progress replaces pressure. And pressure was never sustainable anyway. Let's bring this into something practical you can feel today. Design your days around energy, not just obligation. Notice what activities expand you versus shrink you. Protect time for what nourishes your self-discovery, even if it's imperfect. Say no more often without over-explaining. Say yes more often to what feels aligned, even if it's inconvenient. Read, learn, build, or teach in ways that feel authentic to you. Small choices, repeated daily, create identity. Identity shapes destiny far more than motivation. And destiny doesn't rush, it unfolds. What's powerful is that this stage doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a foundation. You're not done. You're finally oriented. Life still asks things of you, but now you know how to listen. You trust the signals, desire, discomfort, curiosity. They're no longer confusing, they're informative. This is awakening in its mature form, quiet, steady, embodied. And as you settle into this truth, a deeper question naturally rises. Now that you know who you are, what will you choose to build? Now comes the part most people avoid, not understanding, but acting. You've seen that your dreams weren't random, your discomfort wasn't weakness, and your fear wasn't the enemy. They were signals, directions, invitations. The question now is simple, but uncomfortable. What are you going to do with what you know? If your inner self has been speaking to you through restlessness, emptiness, or longing, ignoring it won't bring peace. It only delays clarity. Real transformation doesn't begin with massive leaps. It begins with honest choices. One conversation you've been avoiding, one habit you know no longer fits, one small action that moves you closer to alignment instead of comfort. So ask yourself, and don't rush the answer, what dream have you been postponing under the excuse of later? What version of you is still waiting for courage to show up? And what would change if you stopped treating your desires as threats and started treating them as guidance? If this message resonated, it's because you're not here by accident. This channel exists for people who feel deeply, think critically, and know there's more meaning to uncover beneath the surface of life. So subscribe to Mind's Silent Echo, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because the more you listen to that quiet inner voice, the harder it becomes to live a life that isn't truly yours.